Back to normal.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you're doing all right.
Yep. I gave my worship team a heads up that you're coming around the 26th of June or
Nice.
July or something. I don't remember which month, but
Hopefully it was June.
yeah. So I think I think they'll be okay with giving you the pulpit and we'll just be hanging out. It'd be fun.
That'll be a good time. Cool. We'll do that.
Yeah. And dude, and I looked up I think maybe I'll say this during the callback. Like during the five best. I want to bring up some stuff.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, goody two shoe.
All right. Let me introduce us, then we'll get started. All right.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us again on Five Best. This is the podcast with Greg and Jason, where we talk about our five best things from the last week, and then we let the other person kind of chime in, and we just talk about it for a little bit. So, Jason, you are coming to us from middle of nowhere, Michigan. Is that right?
Amen. Muskegon, Michigan.
Muskegon, Michigan, and I am in San Antonio, Texas. And Jason and I have been friends for a long time. We both are pastors, but in different places and in different ways. And more importantly, we're good friends. So, Jason, you're first this week, right?
All right, yeah. And I think my first one, my five best, is in the last Relevant magazine. There was an article about Catholics becoming cool, and they interviewed this guy named James Martin. He's a Jesuit guy, and he was saying that the reason that Catholics are becoming cool are because of Colbert and the Pope, Stephen Colbert and the Pope. And then simultaneously, my Catholic aunt, who loves Jesus like crazy down in Dallas, Texas, she sent me his latest book. I think it's The Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything, a spirituality for real life.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting into it. I'm like 3 chapters in, and I'm digging it. I really like it. I really like the way this guy thinks. In particular, the thing that I think is the five best, and it was the concept that I think as Protestants we tend to miss this. And he, in his second chapter, he talks about different ways that people seek to find God, and he goes through them, and he says the pluses and minuses of each of them. I think as Protestants, especially, maybe I should not lump all Protestants together, but I think individually, I tend to think in narrower ways. Like I tend
more narrow ways.
Yeah, more narrow ways. That's not a word. Narrower. Yeah, my reading of poetry is really rubbing off. But he goes through categories, and there's the people that try and find God through the path of exploration, and then there's the people of God that try and find God through, and he calls it the path of confusion. And I just think it's so wise of him to say, here are the pluses to that, and here are the minuses. Like I tend to think of the path of confusion as all minus.
Yeah.
And I just really like the way he's opening. I liked in the second chapter, especially how he kind of just blew my mind a little bit in a simple way of, don't forget to have a wider view, have a wider perspective.
Yeah. No, that's good. And so tell us the name of the book one more time.
It's the Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything by James Martin.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah.
And so far that's been good.
Yeah.
So what, based on that, what of the ways of seeking God, which ones best describe you that you read?
I loved the one that was like coming back. I remember. I can't really remember what it was called. Oh, The Path of Return. I really like that one because I think that best describes me. Because I came close to Christ and I grew up in a Christian family, but then I kind of walked away. And I particularly, like I said, he says pros and cons,
Yeah.
and the cons were really good. For all of them, but even in that one, he goes through the con of since and almost all of them that are straight down the middle have have a similar con of thinking you know it all, like thinking you have
Sure.
a monopoly, and so he rightly says, like in the path of return, when you get back to God, the flaw is you instantaneously forget what it was like away. You tend to just put yourself in the I'm found camp and kind of disregard
Right.
all that you've learned.
And that sort of becomes the way it has to happen then, right?
Yeah.
I like that. That's really good. I'm gonna have to look that up. Awesome. That was a great first one, man. Way to start us off, dude.
Thanks, man.
All right. My first one's not quite as exciting, probably. It's so Merle Haggard died sometime since we talked last.
Okay.
And that's not that great of a best, but it got me thinking about his music and then about old country music. And I don't know, there's something about old country music I really love. And there's an honesty to it that I think is really important in kind of, we've talked about this a little bit before, but his dying sort of made me think like, oh man, like there's just not guys writing those kinds of songs anymore. And so anyway, it's kind of sent me on a loop the last week or so listening to old Merle Haggard songs. And
wow.
Yeah, so it was good. Like that's been fun. I love Merle Haggard.
You look a little sadder.
Yeah, that's how it goes. No, but they're not all sad for sure.
Yeah.
But it is. I don't know. It's just you and I have talked about sort of the way music has some kind of like it carries memory in certain ways, right?
Yeah.
And so to go back and listen to some country songs and like pull up some stuff and like hear songs I don't think I'd ever heard growing up, but like largely like my dad loved country music, so I grew up listening to country music and hating it a lot. That's what you do when you're like 13 and 14 and 15, right? But still having it sort of have enough of an impact on my life that to go back and listen to it as an adult there's some sentimentality to it. There's some of that kind of emotion to it, but then also to be able to look at it and say, man, that's just really good songwriting once in a while. It's not all really good songwriting. But yeah, like, I don't know. That's been another, I think we talked about it last time too, but there's that like rediscovering something that you'd already discovered before. That's kind of fun. And so Merle Haggard was that way for me. Like I grew up and I heard Merle Haggard a bunch, but I didn't know who he was and I couldn't have picked him out of a lineup. But to go back and re-listen to him again now, it's like, oh man, yeah, all right. I knew that song. So anyway,
I haven't listened to much Merle Haggard, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll listen to some. But
I think you'll dig some of it because he's pretty honest.
You're rarely wrong. You know your music. Like we have a similar musical heart. Like we listen to music the same way.
Yeah, but you listen to so much more than I do. I feel like I have a very narrow kind of swatch of music. And
I think that's a false feeling. But it's interesting with this renaissance of old country because that Hank Williams movie just came out. And is Merle? Does he have gospel roots also?
Yeah, they all kind of do.
Isn't that? Yeah. Did you see Sonic Highways, the Foo Fighters?
No, I know of it, but I never watched it.
It was cool, but because he goes to the different cities and country, because when he goes to Nashville, it's the only one that he says, I can't really pull the gospel out of this.
Right.
Because everybody I was interviewing in Nashville they all pointed to gospel roots, which was it's interesting to me. I think maybe this is wrong, maybe this is right, but I think that we might like this old classic country because it's the root of the problem that we are struggling with, I think, as pastors. Like this mingling between patriotism and theology. You know, and at the outset, you can see the intentions were excellent. You know, there were these country guys, like they were men. You know, like the Merle Haggard probably killed, you know, thousands of animals in his life. You know,
he probably killed someone.
He probably not killed someone, but like he probably wrestled a bear or something. You know, like they all had these crazy stories of like being stranded out in the middle of nowhere and doing these amazing feats. So they were these really in touch with the earth people, and they had this simple idea of America is a place where I can love God and worship God and be an American. You know, like it was like the precipice of anything can happen, and that could and I think it's like the motives have grown into kind of confusion of congregants of being like an American means being a Christian. You know, like being a good citizen is being a Christian, and there's parts of that, you know, like a Christian is usually a good citizen, but the vice versa is
not always true.
It's kind of dangerous, you know, like that's kind of it's. But yeah, I'll listen to some Merle Haggard. I like that's one of the pluses of these 5 bests is I usually get some homework and get some stuff to listen to. That's good.
Well,
Merle
take a listen to Merle Haggard. I think you'll dig Merle Haggard.
You got a particular album you like?
No, this is the other problem with all these old country guys. They were producing, they were going through like 2 or 3 albums a year. Sometimes it was like,
I know, it's incredible.
You guys got to slow up, man.
And a lot of the albums were like 2 songs.
So he had a great
singles.
A great song that like I think was later in his life, and if you have a chance to listen to it, like knowing he died, it has like even more weight. Called "How Did You Find Me Here," which is a really beautiful like gospel kind of like. Rock bottom, how in the world did you find me and rescue me? It sounds sort of like a psalm, like Psalm 40 or something like that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, okay. You'll dig that one.
That's good. That's good stuff. My number 2 is I think I might have already done it, but I'm not sure. But letter writing. Have I given letter writing?
I feel like this may have been a conversation at some point, but
yeah. But
you wrote me a letter.
Yeah. And that kind of that stems on because I've been here at Muskegon, this McGrath Memorial Congregational Church. I've been the head pastor since November. I came out in October, so it's like 6 or 7 months. And it's been slow to get community, like have peers.
Yeah.
And I instinctively, I don't know where it came from, because I'm not usually a letter writer, but I started writing letters. And like when I felt like, man, I'm way off the map as a pastor, I wrote you and griped a little bit. And when I missed a buddy, I wrote a buddy out in California named Glenn. And when I missed some vision, there was like a visionary at my last pastor. He like had tons of drive. I wrote him a letter, Greg Forgatch. And and when I was struggling with certain sins or struggling with just ideas of who I am, I wrote an older friend, a guy named Mike Chase. And so I was writing all these letters, and then I'm reading this, and it's a callback to my first number 1, the Jesuit Guide. And I found Ignatius wrote 6,813 letters in his lifetime. That's crazy.
That's a lot of letters.
But as I was reading that, I feel God, Holy Spirit. I felt a confirmation that my time in exile, like my time away from community, God was really just giving me community as a bridge, a letter writing community, like friends, you know, to bounce stuff off to, and just it's between journaling and a conversation. So
Yeah.
it goes a little deeper than just talking. And I think I really needed that. And this week I was just praising God and thanking him because it looks like it's coming to an end. My wife made my wife made her first
I love
friend.
letters, but I'm not gonna write anymore.
Yeah, no. I think my exile time, but I'm just been praising God for the letter writing kind of getting me through.
Yeah.
And so I started a Bible study yesterday with some young kids. There's some pastors that are turning as peers. So it looks like I'm getting more community here, but my letter writing community is gold. It's
Yeah.
I hope I don't stop, and I'm not going to stop writing letters. I really do. I want to foster that. I think that Ignatius guy was on to something, with this letter writing stuff.
No, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
I was thinking, you reminded me that I don't know if you knew this about us or not, but when Abby and I were engaged, or like basically there was a semester where we were not together, where so from like September or August to Thanksgiving, we weren't together, but I knew we were going to get engaged at Thanksgiving. And it was back before like cell phone plans and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
long distance was expensive.
Yeah, it was.
And neither one of us had any money, and I was saving money to buy a ring. So we just agreed we would talk. The other thing for any young people listening is there used to be different prices for different times of the day.
Yeah.
So like Sunday nights and Wednesday nights were the cheapest. So we would talk, we kind of had an agreement that we would talk those 2 nights for like a window of time. And then we just wrote each other letters every day. So every day we'd write a letter and put it in the mail. So, but because you didn't get mail on Sundays, you would get like 2 letters on a Monday or something.
Yeah.
And then, but that was pretty cool. I still have most of those letters somewhere. But I was thinking about one of the things, like most of the New Testament is letters.
Yeah.
And so like the kind of joy you get when you get a letter, it's not the same when you get an email or a text message, or like there is a genuine difference between that for some reason. And that's not we always walk this line really closely. I've been listening to some of our old podcasts, and it's like we're always right on the we're really old and hate new technology. That's not really the point of this.
Yeah.
But there is something important about like sitting with a letter, with a sheet of paper and writing with a pen. Like it's more tactile in certain ways.
Yeah.
There's something different about it. But all that to say, like the time and care of sending something, hoping somebody else takes care of it long enough to deliver it, opening it, and taking the time to have to read it, and like decipher what this one letter means in this word, if that's right or not. Like all of those are actually really basic practices for us, as Christians. That I don't know. I think you're tapping into that again. I think that's really true.
Yeah, and I didn't know that about you and Abby. I think if I had, I'd forgotten. But my wife and I, when we were first dating, she was finishing up at Cal, and we did a similar thing. That's cool.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're broke and can't think of anything else to do. But for whatever reason, we were just like, we're not going to do email. We're just going to send letters. So that was I don't know why we didn't do emails, because the emails existed, but we just chose not to do it for some reason. So
that's good stuff.
All right, so I want to try something for my number 2, Jason.
Okay. Are you going to sing a song?
No, close though. I want to read you a story I found on Twitter, which is like the funniest thing I've heard in forever.
Okay.
And so this may not work though. That's
okay. Maybe I should turn my mic off.
Yeah, no, you gotta have it on in case you want to start laughing.
Okay.
I think you're gonna really appreciate the story, but I don't know. I want to give it a quick preface. I don't know this guy. Like I've never met this guy. I don't follow him on Twitter, but through somebody else I follow on Twitter, I ran across this story, and he tells the story in a series of tweets so that it basically unfolds over the course of a night.
Okay.
And every tweet to me is a little funnier than the last one. And just when you think it can't get funnier, it does. So That's the preface for the story. The guy's name is Josh Raby. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's at Josh Raby, so he gets credit for it. All right, so this is the story. It's 1 a.m. and I decided I wanted a milkshake. So there's a McDonald's near my house. I'm greeted at the drive-thru by the following sentence. Hey, holy crap, hello. I'm cleaning it up a little bit. There's some swearing. You are at McDonald's and I am begging your patience. There are no other cars here, by the way. I'm caught off guard, so I mumble, okay, you can have it. The voice comes back, praise you. So I sit for a minute, then he finally returns and says, please tell me your order. So I say milkshake. I don't know why that's all I said. I'll need a minute, he replies. I realize I did not describe my desired milkshake in any way. So I yell, I need to tell you what kind. He's gone for several minutes. When he returns, he says flatly, we aren't going to be able to do the milkshake. I do have many apple pies. Do not ask me why I did this, but the next words out of my mouth were, are you okay? I am not okay. Would you please tell me your order so I can try to punch it in? I will be very slow, but I will get it. I tell him not to worry. I'm not upset, and at this point, for some reason, I order a chicken sandwich. My chicken sandwich order confuses him. Several minutes are spent repeating what I want on it, watching the screen as he tries over and over and over again. At one point, I guess he gave up because the screen just went black for a while. I hear a deep exhale. Dude, I lost my wife. I'm sorry, man. Please, describe your chicken sandwich to me again so I can succeed at one thing. Anyway, he finally gets it and then says, I really do feel bad about the milkshake situation. Can I sell you an apple pie? Fine, I will buy an apple pie. He says, apple pies are cheaper than milkshakes anyway. Okay, thanks. Then there is a weird series of beeps, and when his voice comes back in, he is effing screaming into his headset, I found her! Thank God! What? Who did you find? My wife! She was watching me from behind the boxes. At this point, I have ordered a chicken sandwich I do not want, and an apple pie I do not want, and no milkshake, and I've been here for 22 minutes. Hold on. Sorry, it just keeps going. Can you give me my total, I say, because honestly, I don't know if I want to understand his marriage or if I even could, and I just want to go. Oh, man. I knew this wasn't going to work. That's why I'm nervous to try it. So he says, your total is 8. Hold on. My wife is here, and she wants me to tell you she will sell you 2 apple pies at a discount. So I say, what is the discount? He says, 2 apple pies for only $2. You should take it. Note, 1 apple pie is $1.19. Sure, give me the extra pie. She says, thank you. Tell her I said no problem. Why am I talking to his wife like this? Why? I pull around, and they are making out in the window. And he has his thumb out like he is aware I will be driving up to this. Both of these people are in their mid-40s. They unstick themselves from one another, and I hand him my card. Sorry about this, he said. I haven't worked at McDonald's in 16 years. I say, it's fine, to which he says, fine just stands for effed up, insecure, neurotic, and error-prone. His wife cackles and says, I knew that when I was 13. Get with it, man. I have been here for 37 minutes. I am then treated to a story about how they met at a McDonald's that is very short and is really only, we met at McDonald's in 1993. So listen, I get my card and drive ahead to the next window, and there is a whole separate human at that window. He hands me my bag, leans out the window, and says, you get to drive away. And finally shuts the window, sits on a stool, head in his hands. My chicken sandwich was wrong, by the way. That's the whole thing. I've been laughing for days about that.
Oh my gosh.
There's a whole nother human being.
It's weird. It's weird. It's weird. It's weird, man. It's weird that you prefaced that story that it was gonna get funny, and I started to laugh when he said, "I lost my wife."
I know.
That's weird. That's like that's the dark. That was crazy.
Some guy's night at McDonald's. Oh man, I don't. Oh, like I said, I don't know that guy. I don't know anything about him, but man, I was dying at that. Like this was. I don't have anything else out of it other than, man, it was just funny. And I put it on Facebook and I retweeted it, but I don't think people read it all the way through. And like just when I was like laughing already and was like, oh, this can't get any funnier, the guy who says you get to drive away is like the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, that was my number 2.
I don't even know where to go with it.
Sorry, man.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Nothing to do with it. That was a long one too. Sorry, it took a long time, but I just thought it was hilarious.
That was funny. Okay, my number 3. My number 3 is I was looking around online just to give a listen to Ben Harper's new one. He just came out with an album last week called "Call It What It Is," and I'd heard the title track, but so I knew that was good. But I just wanted to listen, and I found on YouTube this full performance. He played live on KEXP. He plays like 3 or 4 songs and he talks in between them. And it was a March 29th is when it first aired. And it's worth watching. It's like 30 minutes and 3 or 4 songs and he talks in between. But he opens with the title track, "Call It What It Is." And it's a racial injustice song.
Huh.
And one of the cool parts about the video is you see how passionately Ben Harper is connected to his songs. And so he gets in this zone and he does it. He does this song. And then at the end, he's having trouble like transitioning out of just being in the song, being in the zone. And the radio announcer asks him a question. And he says, "Man, I don't want to write that song. I don't want to write that song. I shouldn't have to write that song," because he's talking about the police officers, killing, guys, and he calls it what it is. It's murder. And just that I don't know how it made it 5 best, but it just resonated with, as a pastor, and as just a human. Sometimes I don't want to say it. I wish we didn't have to preach some of these messages. I wish we wouldn't. I wish it's like there's a longing of, and it's almost psalm-esque, of a longing for when there will be no more pain, there will be no more suffering.
Yeah.
I resonated with, man, I'm just so tired of stating the obvious,
right,
over and over. And I'm so tired of sins messing up my life and messing up this world. Like it was, so it's a drastic whiplash from your last.
Yeah, maybe don't leave it that one next time. All right.
No.
I think there is this piece to that though, right? Like one is the wishing we didn't have to write that song or wishing we didn't have to preach that message, and then the other part of it is, the way in which language buffers us from reality. So, or can, right? Like, I mean, I'm thinking about this because that desire to not have to speak it, right, or to not have to say it, is really what it lies behind not calling it murder, right, and not calling it something else. It's like this spin that we put on our sin so that it protects us from the full impact of it, or the weight of it in certain ways, so that it's not greed or just unbridled consumption, right? I'm just saving, or whatever it happens to be. Like but the murder one especially, like, it's protecting and serving. Well, no, it's not. That's not what that is, right?
Yeah.
And so we dress things up. One of my uncles is an old Baptist preacher, and he used to say that about alcoholism for him, because he grew up drinking all the time, and like part of his conversion story was giving up alcohol. And he goes, "We used to just call us drunks."
Yeah.
And now everybody's an alcoholic, and it's like there is something true about that, right? There's a different weight to the word. I don't know, and I don't know really where I would come down on that sort of debate anyway. But there is something about calling it what it is that's prophetic and important and hard to do, like what you're naming. Like, you wish you didn't have to do it, but not doing it is so bad for us.
Yeah.
I think, that's good stuff, man.
Yeah, yeah. The lamenting side of it is what I echoed with, but it's that side that you just brought out is really that underlying, that like non-confrontation. You get just tired of the confrontation. It's a daily grind, but it's dangerous if we don't. Like, the moment he stops writing the song, or the moment we stop naming it as it is,
yep,
we're lost.
That's exactly, that's truth.
All right, hit me.
What's your 3? My number 3 is a quote from Stanley Hauerwas, and it actually ties into one of yours. I can't remember which one I was thinking of. But it's this: freedom does not reside in making choices, but in being the kind of person for whom certain options simply are not open. I'll read it one more time. Freedom does not reside in making choices, but in being the kind of person for whom certain options simply are not open. What he's unpacking there, or like what he's doing, is expounding on or naming a reality that Augustine names early in theology. And sometimes we as a culture begin to think that freedom is the ability to choose between two different things, or between opposite things or opposing things. And Augustine says that real freedom is sort of being bent in the right direction. And so that what Hauerwas is naming there is that I've been thinking a lot about it because of just trying to form my own children, right? Or to help shape who they're going to become. And I think one of the pieces that's hard for me is I definitely grew up in a culture that cared about certain moral things, and had a heightened sense of morality and maybe even legalism around things that I don't have. And I often wonder and get nervous about sort of just a lack of concern about some of that stuff. So one of the examples that was really vague in general. So one of the examples is talking to some college students recently about what movies they would not watch. And there's almost none. Like, they have next to zero filter on that stuff. Like, it just doesn't, in their brains, it doesn't impact them at all. It's like, well, what would have to happen in a movie for you to walk out? And they just can't imagine a scenario where they would do that. So that has kind of got me reeling a little bit, just trying to figure out what's going on. But at the same time, I've been reading, Galatians and Ephesians and sort of this freedom we have in Christ. And I'm constantly trying to figure out what in the world that looks like, that kind of the freedom we have in Christ, and also the desire to kind of guard our hearts or be careful of who we are. I don't know. So anyway, that quote from Hauerwas hits that, and I don't really know what to do with it all the way, but it's
super helpful. It's super helpful to me, because it's a positive way of saying what I usually say. Because it's a hard thing to wrestle with, because and the way I usually say it is, true freedom is being enslaved to Christ, which is,
sure.
But and that's almost, you know, a direct quote out of Galatians, you know, but it's kind of a negative way of saying it, and it's confusing. You know, like how could being chained to something be setting you free? How
Yeah.
can you, you know, I really like, it's really helpful. Thanks, Greg. This is it's a really helpful way to look at it, because when you're truly free, that's more what it's like. It's not, I like how it describes the end rather than how to get there. You know, like it describes, much like you always say, you know, like the reasons you like Tolkien more than C.S. Lewis is he describes the character. He just describes the character, and the character has these attributes rather than describing the attributes that the character has. You know what I mean? But it sounds like Hauerwas is saying true freedom is you're at this place where you are enslaved to Jesus, and you're enslaved to the Word of God, and there's certain choices that are just not an option. And so he's leaving that like chain to language out, because I think it kind of gets confusing, and he's just saying the end goal. And I think that's how it always comes through with these phrases that are almost poetic. Like you could, in my mind, that's almost a word picture. You know, that's almost it's you see a person that's truly alive, and maybe in color, and then there's kind of half the canvas is just dark and has maybe some images of the world or something like that, and then maybe the other half of the canvas has life, has vegetation, has gardens, has oceans, has living, you know, things. And the character that's fully light is maybe on the precipice, but is facing the light side, you know. I don't know, but
so our friend, mutual friend now, Phil Saul, when he and I were talking about this idea years ago, he had this image of a rake in his head, and I think he might even preached on this and brought in a rake, like a metal rake. Because like his point was, when I told him, like, Augustine has this idea that we're bent certain directions, and that's what, like, real freedom is being bent the right way. That's what. So he took the picture of a rake and was like, basically, if you bend the prongs on a rake, it doesn't work as a rake anymore. It just can't do what it was designed to do, right? But once they're bent back to where they belong, now the rake can do the thing it was designed to do. And so when you tease that out with humanity and freedom and all of that, then, you know, when God reshapes us and rebends us into what he's made us to be, then we can bring him glory and worship and praise in ways that we couldn't when we were bent the wrong way.
That's useful. That's really good. That's really neat. My number 4.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure my number 2 and my number 4, I might have already said this one, but Fury.
Oh boy.
Yeah. You know, it was a light week or something. I don't know. But I watched Fury again, and maybe it hasn't been.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. I love that. I love that film. And
that's a Brad Pitt tank movie?
Yeah, it was a Brad Pitt tank movie. And there's the quote that stood out was Brad Pitt was part of this tank, the Fury, and it opens with them as the only survivors of this battle, and they come back, and they're all talking about that. And one of the guys from another tank says, let's stop complaining about the past and start thinking about the battle we're about to go into, you know. And that was just kind of bouncing around in my head in just my daily walk, you know, like, and then even deeper than that, I think what I like about the movie is there's something about a lose-lose scenario that paints a truer picture of war than any other possible, you know, because it's a lose-lose, you know. they're in this tank. The tank. Oh, spoiler alert! The tank.
Yeah.
the tank.
So
The,
go ahead.
the
Wait.
tank. The tank breaks down, and Brad Pitt, as the leader of the captain of this tank, says, "We're just going to stand. We're going to stay with the tank and defend the tank as these German troops walk through." And they know going into the night that they're not going to last the night. And there's really no point if they keep the tank, so they stay alive, But if it's a lose-lose in like every single way. It's like
It's the Alamo,
lose,
bro.
lose.
It's the Alamo.
Yeah, it's the Alamo. Remember? No, never mind. But it shows the futility of war, and there's something about the lose-lose that brings out true character in a way that it's attractive to me. It's when it has to do with, I think, true character. I remember Swindoll would always say, character is actually what people do behind closed doors. That's what character is, and I like that kind of definition put on a stage and just looked at, and like, wow, I like good character.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that stuff too. I haven't seen that movie though. You've got me thinking about the character stuff though. When I grew up, we always used to say sports builds character, right? That was that was why you put your kids in sports, because you would build their character. Or like Calvin and Hobbes does this running joke about things that build character, like mowing the lawn or shoveling snow or whatever. And they're all kind of true, but Calvin's got this great line of like, how come every time I build character, you save a few bucks? And I always like that one. But when I got to college, our college had different sports teams, and there was a big sign on the hockey rink on the way into the hockey rink that said, sports doesn't build character, it reveals it. And I think that's part of what you're naming in the lose-lose situation, is like your character gets revealed when you're put under that kind of pressure or stress, or put in such a strange scenario or such a lose-lose proposition or whatever, that who you really are sort of bubbles up to the surface, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it reveals who you really are.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, hit me with your 4.
All right, my fourth one is actually kind of like that in some ways. I was thinking about the Masters this weekend, because I was thinking about Jordan Spieth. Do you watch the Masters at all?
Dude, I'm not old enough to watch golf.
Yeah, sorry. That's not all right. I know.
Okay.
Anyway, he's an amazing golfer. He won the Masters last year. He was winning the first 3 rounds this year. Going into the back 9, he was like 5 or 6 strokes up on the next closest guy. He had just come off of 4 birdies in a row, which in golf is good, Jason.
Yeah.
And then
we went golfing.
He bogeyed the 10th hole.
Jason, stop talking in my backswing.
Yeah, sorry. So he bogeyed the 10th, bogeyed the 11th, and then quadruple bogeyed the 12th. So he just absolutely melted down. And he's like this 21, 22-year-old kid who is just this kind of phenom, but just lost it. Like, and to watch somebody lose it like that in that moment is really similar to what you were naming about the lose-lose thing in the character. But it also highlighted for me like the cruelty of sports.
Yeah.
Because and I was thinking about this with the Final Four last week when we talked about that too. Like the North Carolina guy hits a shot that should be remembered forever as like the greatest shot you've ever seen. And then the next guy hits the greatest shot you ever saw, and you'll never remember the North Carolina shot again, right? And it's like, it's so cruel.
Yeah.
It's so cruel. And like this kid, and he ended up taking second in the Masters. So he's played the Masters 3 times. He finished second, first, and second. And it's like, so he was better than everybody else who played that golf course except for one guy. And if you took out the one hole, he was better than that guy the whole time.
Yeah.
But the one shot he had to hit, he didn't hit, and it cost him 3 or 4 more shots. And it's just so cruel. Like,
yeah,
it's so cruel, because we're not talking about how great Jordan Spieth is because he finished second. We're talking about what a choke job he had because he didn't come in first. and it's like, it's the cruelty of it. It's a weird thing to kind of have as your best, but there is. But I think that I think his the way he sort of owned it afterwards of this is just what happens. This is golf. I rushed a shot. I got ahead of myself. I didn't contain myself. I didn't slow down, whatever. And it's all of that is really I don't know. I love the Masters. I love watching golf on that. There's a couple of weekends a year I like watching golf. That's one of them. It's such a ridiculously hard thing to be good at.
Yeah.
And the amount of the amount of precision and intensity it takes and patience, it's a weird combination as an athletic event, because it's a lot of things you don't need in any other sport you have to have for golf.
Yeah. And magnified.
And it magnifies it. Yeah. And
focus in every other game is crucial.
Yeah. Yep.
But focus in golf, it's somehow exponentially more crucial. It's incredible.
It's one of those, every other sport, you want energy, you want momentum, you want all of that kind of stuff, almost inertia as a team or as an individual. You want golf, you don't want any of that. Every shot has to be its own thing. Because momentum one way or the other gets you in trouble. You want to block out everything else. You have to consistently force yourself to be patient, which you don't usually have to do in other sports the same way. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, I like a lot of that about golf. I love sports. I like to get those in every once in a while because I know you'll never put them in otherwise. So, and I figured if I'm going to devote, 15 hours of my week to watching a golf event, I might as well put it on my top 5.
It's got to be a top 5.
It's got to be a 5 best.
That mirrors reality too. That's another thing we like about golf, or sports in general, is I had a week that because I've been trying to digitally record my sermons.
Yeah.
So I got this digital recorder. I didn't do enough homework before, the service. So you have to set up on the digital recorder, someplace to record it onto. I thought you could just push record.
Oh, okay.
And so I plugged the thing in, it's looking all good. And I go up and I deliver what I thought was one of my better sermons. And I go back and nothing's been recorded. And so I'm just gosh. And it's a mirror of, it's those times when you're watching in games that it's just the little things that are so crucial, and it is so cruel. It's just so annoying. And I don't know how to push record. I don't know how to record something, out of tape, it's gnarly. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and in golf, the thing, part of the cruelty of it is there's nobody else to blame.
Yeah.
Jordan Spieth just can't, he has to look in the mirror and say, I hit a bad shot. Again, this might be on because we're getting old thing, but just the ability to look at a situation and take ownership of the fault.
Yeah.
To be able to look at something and say, I did something wrong there, or I should have done this better, or you own I didn't hit the record the right way. I should have looked at it ahead of time. That's how you get better. That's how you don't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
But man, we live in a culture that doesn't do that. And raising kids, it is not their instinct to do that. Their instinct is oh, this thing's made bad, or they should have told me I had to do that. Or no, you just didn't know when to hit record. You didn't figure it out ahead of time. That's on you. I don't know. There's something to that that's really important as well.
Almost every single one of these, I think it would be beneficial maybe to do a 5 best. How do we teach? Because you mentioned earlier how you got some college students that they have no, I'm not going to sit through this movie button. They have no.
Yeah.
And then how do we teach that? How do we encourage that? And then how do we encourage people to own up? And actually see the hero in this golfer. What's the guy's name?
Jordan Spieth.
Yeah, and the Jordan Spieth, I think it shows a better man.
Yeah.
In fact, he just owned it, and he got crushed by the little deals. All right, I'll hop on to my number 5. My number 5 is New Rolling Stone magazine came out. Actually, I'll lump in a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
But one of them is well, yeah, no, I won't lump in a bunch of stuff, but I'll do my 5th best, and then I'll do a couple callbacks to some earlier conversations or whatever.
Perfect.
But our Pearl Jam is mentioned in this latest one. 25 years old this year, the band Pearl Jam, and they're touring this summer, and it makes me really want to go and see Pearl Jam. Because
are they coming to Detroit?
I don't know, but they're 50 years old. That's crazy. They've been doing it for 25 years. I think they interviewed the guitarist, and he said, I'm playing in this band half my life. That's just incredible. They're old rockers. And I love bands that get it down. I remember when there was a Christian rock band in California, the Prayer Chain, and they made an album, Antarctica, and after that album, they broke up for like 5 or 6 years, and then they did like a reunion tour, and I don't think they'd seen each other in forever. And then they just stepped on the stage, they just picked up their instruments, and they owned it. That's their craft, that's their deal. And I think Pearl Jam is a place where not only do they own their craft, they own like a corner of rock and roll. Like I just there are Beatles. Like I think we've talked about this, but and so I'll segue that into last week. I said best cover. One of the best cover songs was "I've Got a Feeling."
Yeah,
and they covered the Beatles, and it made me think as walking away sometime over this week. What about covers that are so good that you don't even know that there is an original?
Right. Yeah.
Like, and it's happened a million times, like we talked with Dylan, but Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley.
Yeah, that's one for sure.
I think that's got anyway. If I were to read
that one should go on the list for sure.
If I was, that might even be more potent and powerful than the Pearl Jam. I've Got a Feeling. And then my other callback is I tried to find this article by a guy named Ted Nugent or John Nugent. That is not Ted Nugent, not the Nugent. All that keep coming up. I said like John Nugent article, John Nugent journalist, John Nugent whatever. All that kept coming up. There was a guy that wrote in 1880s. Is that him?
No, that's not the guy.
Why the heck? What's the name of the article I'm looking for?
I don't even remember. What were we talking about?
I don't know. It's about war, I think.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Let me look it up while we're chatting. Keep talking.
That was crazy. Anyway, those are my callbacks. I wanted to change my best cover of all time, probably to Hallelujah.
Yeah, that's a good one. You're right about that.
That's a ridiculous one. And then I wanted to find out how the heck do I find this John Nugent guy, because I don't think he's the 1880s guy. And then my 5th best was Pearl Jam's 25 years old. Also in the Rolling Stone magazine, this last one's, I love it when they go back to rock and roll. They have like the 40 best punk rock bands. I love lists like that. And then and the number 1 is Ramones. And so they have a lead article about the Ramones. That band, rock and roll, dude, CBGB, New York City. Like it's just 70s, like all of it. Like I think it's so interesting how, much like we were talking about on your number 1, the country, music has this ability of like encapsulating memories. And like you can sum up New York City in 1970s with the Ramones, like they're dirty, they're messy, they're simple, like they have the fundamentals down,
Yeah, I've never got into the Ramones all the way. I feel like it's one of my weaknesses.
They wanted to be a rockabilly band. that's how punk rock started. I read some articles by Joey Ramone, and he said, like we've tried to play the old Eddie Cochran songs but we weren't good enough. So we just simplified them and sped them up.
Interesting. All right, so here you go. I found the guy for you.
Okay.
All right. His I think his blog site is called Walk and Word.
Walk and Word. I'm gonna write
Yeah.
that down. Excellent. I'll look that up. I'm just because of Phil's newsletter, and you're always reading articles. I've really gotten into this article stuff. I realize articles and newsletters. You couldn't have been more right. I think it's so interesting how filling and how intriguing these newsletters.
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 of them right now that I get every week, and it's like they're so good. Phil's is really good. I was thinking about in the
Phil's
future.
is funny. Yeah, keep on.
In the future here, we may get Phil on one of these times. It's really early where he is, so I don't know if we'll pull that off all the way. But but once his is ready to kind of go public and he wants to get a bunch of subscribers and stuff, I think we'll have him sponsor the podcast.
I would love that.
That'd be good, and then we'll have him on, and that'd be fun. But I think this next week is his last like trial one, so he knows what he wants to do, and then we can see about it after that.
That's cool.
That's awesome. I didn't give my 5th one. Hey, hold on 1 second. I've got to go grab my 5th one.
Okay. I'll talk about something. I don't know what I'll talk about. Maybe I'll talk about how these articles that Bell's one was amazing by Michael Frost. I didn't end up using it in my sermon, but I did. It just did enrich me greatly. And I'll probably use it with my outreach minister team. Or I might just do a whole series on it. I really like that. Michael Frost, Bells. It's an acronym. And then anything else I got? No.
Hey, did you cover for me while I was gone, Jason?
Yeah, you'll probably just cut it. I was talking about how Bells was really good.
Oh, really? Good.
I didn't end up using it in my sermon, but I did end up using your question,
Oh, good.
What were the what made the change? What made the change in the apostles from disciples to apostles? It's cool.
All right, so my number 5 is The Politics of Jesus by John Howard Yoder. I bring him up a bunch, and we talked about
it. That was last week, wasn't it?
Week? Well, hold on. I want to explain, because last week I talked about John Howard Yoder and talking to lawyers. So that's right. Yeah, and that went pretty well. But one of the things in doing that came up that I wanted to kind of quote, because I think it's one of the things that's fascinating from Easter season and resurrection stuff that we don't talk about that much. All right, so here's this quote. Did I quote this last week?
I know you quoted Yoder, but I don't know what you wrote. I think you might have just talking about Yoder.
Okay, that's what I did. All right, so I'm going to quote him this time so you guys can see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
All right. The cross of Jesus is the extreme demonstration that agape seeks neither effectiveness nor justice and is willing to suffer any loss or seeming defeat for the sake of obedience. In short, Christians are to live and love like Jesus and know that in spite of the way things appear, God's purposes will prevail with the coming of God's kingdom. The resurrection of Jesus is proof that love cannot be conquered even if evil does its worst. With this assurance, Christians do not need to seek control to make things come out right. I just, the more I read,
you can hang your hat on that one. That's really good.
Yeah, right. And the more you read for the Easter readings, like the Revelation readings, especially the last couple of weeks, that's how Revelation reads. I think that's the cry in each of the last 2 weeks that worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered.
Yeah.
And there's this amazing reversal in Revelation that we worship the guy who lost.
Yeah, it's almost absurd.
Yeah, it is. And then it ramps it up a level this week when that lamb becomes the shepherd.
Yeah.
It's a really fascinating move that John does in telling Revelation, and I just think for whatever, all the different reasons we talk about all the time, but it's just so counterintuitive to the way we see the world.
It is, and it's it goes back to your freedom thing. There's a freedom in that is it's uncontainable. It's incredible because it reminds me of Henry Nouwen, like usual in the name of Jesus, that it's not spectacular. There's no spectacle. And I love
faithful obedience, right? That's it. Like it's just faithful obedience.
Read that sentence in there about the effective. It's not effective. Like it doesn't care about. It said something about effective.
The cross of Jesus is the extreme demonstration that agape seeks neither effectiveness nor justice.
It's so true.
Yeah.
But it is so counterintuitive.
Yeah, it takes, and it's funny because I think you could pretty much, this would be an interesting one to know. I think if you took effectiveness and justice and you held those two poles up, I think you'd pretty much get 98% of folks in one of those two camps.
And I think that's tied to like our number one sin of like ego.
Sure.
Because I think like at our core, we want to be effective and we want to see justice. You know, like I think, you know, and when I just watched that O.J. Simpson thing that was on FX.
Yeah.
And that should have made top 5. I don't know. Sorry about that.
But no more for you.
Yeah,
maybe 5 already.
Yeah, I throw that Pearl Jam away.
Yeah,
25 years,
on, man.
45 years. Who cares? No, but I was so well done. But the injustice of that.
Yeah,
because they painted and they tried to be objective as possible, but LA never looked for anyone else. There was no one else that could have possibly. There was no one in the region. There's no one else that makes sense. Like no one else other than OJ could have killed Nicole and Ron Goldman. Like,
yeah,
they like, and the injustice of it. I just the way, just watching this, you know, like, and this is, I don't know how many years it's been. But I was brought to tears just to see the injustice, and I just like my core hated it. Like it just hates. And
you know, it's fun. So I'm 100% with you on this, right? Like, and I remember where I was when that verdict came down.
Me too.
But what's even more fascinating to me is I did not have that same visceral response to the Rodney King stuff when those cops were let off.
Yeah.
And I think that's as telling about sort of the way I view the world and all that too. But there is like, that's an equal or greater injustice in certain ways, right? I mean, they're both injustice, but it's interesting.
And what flies in the face is what you just read from Yoder, which I think is more true than all of it, is that, you know, the cross isn't concerned with justice and it isn't concerned with being effective. It's about love. It's about Jesus. Like it's, oh man, that's good. That'll get your heart going.
Faithful obedience, right?
Yeah. Faithful obedience.
The cross reminds us that even if we do our worst, God still prevails. It's pretty good stuff.
That's really good.
All right, brother. Always a good time.
Me too. I love it. Next week we'll be a little later. We'll record at 10:30 because I got a 9 to 10.
And we don't need to do all the logistics in the middle of the podcast, man.
Oh, you got to cut that.
No, I got to cut that part out.
No, you don't. People can know.
People will be excited.
Yeah.
They don't care.
All right. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Peace.